Welcome to this episode of Reading with Joey. I'm your host, Joey McGurvels, and we're continuing the Jewish Cultural Terrorism series, and specifically, we will be looking at Betty Friedan and the feminist idea. And the book we're looking at is Betty Friedan's book, The Feminine Mystique, which was released in 1963. And Betty Friedan really led the feminist movement. So, here are Friedan's words. The problem lay buried, unspoken for many years, in the minds of American women. It was a strange stirring, a sense of dissatisfaction, a yearning that women suffered in the middle of the 20th century in the United States. Each suburban wife struggled with it alone. As she made the beds, shopped for groceries, matched slipcover material, ate peanut butter sandwiches with her children, chauffeured Cub Scouts and brownies, lay beside her husband at night, she was afraid to even of herself the silent question, is this all? Over and over, women heard in voices of tradition that they could desire no greater destiny than to glory in their own femininity. They were taught to pity the neurotic, unfeminine, unhappy women who wanted to be poets or physicists or presidents. They learned that truly feminine women do not want careers, higher education, political rights, the independence and the opportunities that old-fashioned feminists fought for. Some women in their 40s and 50s still remember painfully giving up those dreams. But most of the younger women no longer even thought about them. 1,000 expert voices applauded their femininity, their adjustment, their new maturity. All they had to do was devote their lives from earliest girlhood to finding a husband and bearing children. All right, so we're going to stop right there. And basically what Betty Friedan is saying is that, there's this huge problem in the minds of women, and that, being a wife isn't enough. It's not enough. It's not enough to care for your children. It's not enough to love your husband. It's not enough to have a good home. Somehow they feel empty. Somehow they feel like they have no purpose and they have no meaning. So what's the answer? What's the question? So Friedan answers that, and in her words, she says, "If I am right, this problem stirring in the minds of so many American women today is not a matter of loss of femininity or too much education or the demands of domesticity. It is far more important than anyone recognizes. It may well be the key to our future as a nation and a culture. We can no longer ignore that voice within women that says, I want something more than my husband and my children and my home." All right, we're going to stop right there. And I'm going to read that again. We can no longer ignore that voice within women that says, I want something more than my husband and my children and my home. This idea, this modern radical feminist idea, it has destroyed the family. It has destroyed the family. Women aren't interested in being mothers anymore, in being wives. And as a result, men aren't interested in being husbands and being fathers anymore. When the women started giving it up, the men were like, well, there's no point anymore. She doesn't even want this. The traditional role of women was to look after the home, to raise the children. And the traditional role of men was to provide the resources to be able to do that. And it was all about children. But this feminist movement was basically created by Jewish women, ugly Jewish women, like Betty Friedan, who knew that they were too ugly to get a husband. They knew that they were unattractive. And so they were afraid that, I could never have a beautiful family. I could never be a loving wife. I'm just too repulsive. So then they want to ruin it for everybody else. That became her goal. And like so many other Jewish feminists that followed her, it was basically, trying to refocus that aim and say, well, no, it's more about my rights, and it's more about family not being enough for me. But really, it wasn't even a choice. They couldn't have a family if they wanted because they were so ugly. So these ugly, hideous, disgusting feminists like Betty Friedan come along and start to argue, we can no longer ignore the voice within women that says, I want something more than my husband and my children and my home. When really, she couldn't even have any of those things because she didn't truly understand what it means to be a woman. Of all the things we have discussed on this series of Jewish cultural terrorism, this idea has been the most destructive of them. Because it has struck at the heart of tradition, of what it means to be human, the family. And that's why even now, you just see it everywhere, this feminism. And the results have been just terrible. And women aren't interested in being women anymore. And it was really all started by this book, The Feminine Mystique, and these ideas that, you can have it all. You can have a husband, you can have one kid, maybe two, but the rest of your life should be about you. Should be about you. You should go start a career, or go get a hobby, or go do something else. And that has attacked the family. And I think that it was probably the most destructive aspect of Jewish cultural terrorism. And if we can overturn this, then things could start to improve. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Reading with Joey. Check back for the conclusion of this series. Thank you.